I think that's one thing that I really would want to satisfy myself on, that the way that the project is set up is going to have sufficient traffic so that not to really make things unbearable for people who live there. I'm concerned about the adequacy of the water and sewer. I want to make sure that's there. And if the city of Eureka wants to annex Cutton and annex Myrtletown, I think that maybe it's something that they should have been talking about a long time ago. I don't see that it's a bad idea necessarily. But I do think the idea of mixed use is a good one. I think in McKinleyville, it would be really nice if in some of these developments there was a coffee shop or a little market, so people didn't have to get in their car and drive to Central Avenue to get just a thing of milk. In the old days in neighborhoods, there were little markets and little oases, and I think that's an important feature that I'd like to see continued in some of the developments going forward.
As far as the Energy Authority, it seemed like that was something that was really going gangbusters a few years ago, a collaboration between the county and the various cities. But since then, it seems like it's kind of fallen off the radar a bit. Do you think the county can do more, not just to meet some political target of saying we're creating green jobs, but to actually shift some of the county's energy production, a substantial percentage, into renewable sources of energy?
There's some interesting projects on the drawing board. There's one of the ones that I've spent a lot of time looking at is the Bear River Wind Project. And that's going to be a fairly major project if it gets approved. You're talking about over 20 fairly industrial level windmills up outside of Ferndale, up in Bear River. And I happen to, our company has some radio towers up on that ridge. So I've spent some time up on that ridge, and it is one of the windiest places I've ever been. So I think it could be a real source of green energy. I think that the Wave Connect is an interesting project. I share some concerns about the potential impact on the fishermen, who have really had, pretty much every tough luck situation come their way, and I'd hate to see one of the prime crab grounds taken away from them for 10 years for a test study. I think there's got to be another solution to that, but I think that wave energy is really something that's quite a viable alternative. We also, people forget that we have the Schatz Energy Lab up at Humboldt State. We're actually one of the leaders in hydrogen fuel cell technology up here in Humboldt County. Toyota is using some of the technology developed up at Humboldt State to use a fuel cell hybrid. I've actually ridden in one. It's remarkable. It's so quiet, it's almost disconcerting. And I think that that's a possibility. And then I think one of the proposals that the Headwaters Fund was working on before I left, and I think is still something that could be come forward and be a viable project, is a loan program for householders to put solar panels on their rooftops and finance it through their property tax assessment mechanism. And so it would be something that the Headwaters Fund could make the loans, and it would be basically automatic paid through the property taxes. And I think that would allow a lot of people the financial ability to afford solar. So I think all those things are important, and I think a lot of those are doable.
You just brought up the Headwaters Fund, and of course you did point to that as one of your accomplishments in our first round of interviews. Talking to some of these Fortuna City Council candidates, some of them seem to feel that Fortuna took the brunt of the job loss from Headwaters being walled off from natural resources, harvesting the trees, and yet haven't seen so many of the benefits from the fund. I mean, how would you defend that? I mean, has Headwaters Fund really lived up to its hype?
I think the Headwaters Fund, you have to look at it in context. One of the things that the county decided to do when it created the Headwaters Fund was not recreate the experience of the ORIC basically the ORIC jobs program that was put in place after Redwood National Park was established. And I think a lot of people at the end of the day say, whatever happened to that money? Where did it go? supposedly went into the job retraining, but a lot of people never saw the impact of that. So the county made it really hard to spend the Headwaters Fund money. I mean, that was one of the things that they did intentionally to try to make sure that there was a lasting impact on it. The fact that we were able to put $10 million to work throughout the county and still have, we started with 18 million and worked the balance up to $20 million by the time I left, while putting $10 million to work, I thought was pretty good work. Did Fortuna not get its share? At least in the beginning, the only way the Headwaters Fund could give money was if you applied for it. And Fortuna didn't really, there weren't that many applications there. We did fund some programs. There's a digital media lab down at the high school now that is being funded by the Headwaters Fund, which is really looking at the future for our kids in terms of jobs and giving them skills that they need. I think there was also a project, there were several projects in Rio Dell in terms of upgrades of water and sewer that were really important, as also a food distribution study to try to see if we could support the local farms down there. The grass-fed meat initiative is primarily an Eel Valley project. So I think we did do a fair amount to address that. Did we do much in the timber industry specifically? No. But again, we didn't get many applications for it. And we tried to put forward a program, which is still being worked on, a loan fund for small timber owners to try to help them out with the fact that the idea of filing a timber harvest plan could be a very expensive proposition for a small timber owner. It could be a $40,000, $50,000 fee up front. And you may want to get your plan filed now, but not harvest until market conditions are better. So being able to work out a loan fund where these small landowners could have it all in place and then harvest when the market conditions are good, we thought would actually bring some stability to the market, try to increase harvesting when prices were higher and naturally cut production when prices were lower. And I think that still has a lot of promise. I think that's a plan that can still happen as well.
Willow Creek, that's of course kind of the far-flung part of your district out there. I guess folks out there have to feel some sense of disappointment. The whole fiber optic redundant line was originally going to come over 299. So many hopes and dreams dashed, then brought back up later. Now we're looking at some sort of proposal to bring it down Highway 36, which still leaves the Highway 299 folks pretty high and dry. How long are folks in the Upper Trinity River Basin, whatever you call it, are going to have to wait to get high-speed broadband service?
Well, if I'm elected, hopefully not very long. I think one of the interesting things about Highway 96 is if you look at what Siskiyou Telephone has done. They've done fiber optic from Wairika all the way out to Somes Bar and places along the Salmon River. It stops at the Humboldt County border. And when Siskiyou Telephone actually tried to step across the Humboldt County border to hook up some people who wanted the high-speed internet, Verizon, who's the incumbent telephone company up there, sent a cease and desist letter and said, get out of our territory. And I don't think that's an acceptable response from Verizon. I think we need to be taking them to task and saying, look, you can either provide this service or you can let somebody else do it. And I think the fact that Siskiyou Telephone's willing to come in to Orleans and offer it indicates that it's not a financial viability issue, it's not a technological issue, it's a regulatory issue. And if one thing the government should be able to solve, hopefully, is regulatory problems. So I think that coming across Highway 96 is certainly it's the most cost-effective way to do it, and I think that it would work for everybody up there. And yeah, I hear it from the constituents up there all the time. High-speed internet is a major priority for the eastern part of the district.
Now, regrettably, character seems to have come up as an issue in the race. There was the whole revelation right before the election, which came out on one of these anonymous hate blogs, oddly enough, not even through any sort of reputable news source, about this DUI that your opponent, Mr. Sundberg, I guess.
You know, I really would rather not talk about that.
Oh, well, I hear you. Okay, so that's your answer then.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think that has any place in this conversation.
Okay. I mean, I guess just in general, you know, how would you want to handle an issue like that coming up with county staff or with one of your other fellow supervisors?
You mean if it were me?
Or you know, someone on your staff or a fellow supervisor if elected, you know, somewhere on down the line. I mean, how best does a local government handle that sort of situation?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm a believer that it's best handled if a person is forthright and brings it up themselves. I mean, if it were me, I would want to be the one to tell people as opposed to having somebody else hear about it. I mean, that's just my style.
Right.
But I think, you know, it's really hard to judge somebody else. I know people who have unfortunately made mistakes like that. You know, I don't approve of it, but again, I think really the voter should, you know, go for the person who can best represent them.
Regardless of what happens to Bonnie or Virginia, it does seem like an issue where the Coastal Commission is going to have a big say, and the next Board of Supervisors is going to have a big say on who's representing Humboldt County on the Coastal Commission. Assuming Supervisor Neely isn't there next year, what would your assessment criteria be for choosing a new local rep to the Coastal Commission?
My understanding is the governor can pretty much decide who he wants, but that he will ask for input from the Board of Supervisors. Right. You know, I think that, you know, obviously that's only still one out of, 17 votes, I think, 17 people on the Coastal Commission. But I think it would be good to have somebody who has a, you know, I mean, I think somebody like Jimmy Smith would be wonderful on the Coastal Commission. I think Jimmy, you know, who's a fisherman who really has an affinity for the water and for the coastline, who's done a marvelous job with the MLPA and trying to pull things together. You know, I think Jimmy would be an excellent candidate. I don't know if Jimmy would be willing to do it, but that would be, in thinking about the candidates, we pretty much all have some portion of our constituency that has, you know, is on the coast. And so we all have reasons why, you know, we would be appropriate, but I think Jimmy in particular being the most, you know, if Bonnie's not reelected, then the next most senior person on the board would be a wonderful candidate.
And although again it's on your district, the balloon track, I mean, does that disturb you as far as the highest best use of limited, almost really irreplaceable waterfront property to put some sort of big box mall type development on that area?
You know, I think it is appropriately left for the city of Eureka to figure out. I'm very happy that they've been able to work out the cleanup plans between the Baykeeper and Security National. I mean, to me, that's a major milestone, and I think that my focus has really been on, you know, hoping that we could agree on what a cleanup is. You know, for me as an individual or me as a supervisor to tell the city of Eureka what's the best use of their, you know, of their land, and it feels a little inappropriate to me. I mean, I probably would have wished that the jail wasn't right next to the courthouse, but, you know, it is. And, you know, I think that while I'm not personally a fan of big box in terms of the fact that I don't think it really creates long-term jobs and well-paying jobs in Humboldt County, you know, it would not be my preference, but I want to respect the city of Eureka, and, you know, it's pretty clear that there's this election in Eureka is going to be, to some degree, there's a direct ballot initiative on that, so we'll know the will of the people there.
Was there anything else you'd like to say to the voters as they head to the polls one final time on November 2nd?
Well, I want to appreciate them for being patient with what seems like an endless campaign. And I hope that they'll you know, look at the candidates and look at the experience levels. You know, I think that's really, at the end of the day, if you were to ask me what is the difference between Ryan Sundberg and Patrick Cleary, I would say that's the experience. That I think, you know, 31 years in business and over 10 years of county government service, as well as a lot of nonprofit work, nonprofit leader of the year. and I'm probably a better musician than Ryan, but he's probably a better basketball player than me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Cleary, for coming into Has Beans again.
Absolutely, Charles. Thank you for having me.